Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin is reporting to training camp despite not having a new deal. While McLaurin will be showing up at training camp, he'll immediately be placed on the PUP list with an ankle injury. The All-Pro wideout still seeking a new deal as he enters the final year of his current contract. McLaurin has been a staple of the Commanders wide receiver room, leading them in yards in each of his first 6 seasons there in D.C. CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan joining us now. And Tyler, I guess McLaurin showing up is a good sign, but him going right to the PUP list, is that a signal that he's holding in?
I would say so. And yes, of course, it's a positive sign to see your star wide receiver when you're in the midst of a contract dispute show up to the facility. But we kind of have to unpack this a little bit, right? Because there's a difference between showing up and putting the pads on and being ready to go as the regular Terry McLaurin. And then there's, as you indicated, the possibility of a hold-in. Now, what Terry McLaurin is doing by coming into the facility, he's avoiding fines, right? So when we talk about these hold-ins, the whole point of it is that you're basically still holding out, but you're just not getting fined. And up to this point, Terry McLaurin had already been fined around $200,000, $50 grand per day that you've been missing practice. So if you're looking at it from the financial perspective, this makes sense to show up to the facility. And they said today on Sunday that he's still dealing with that ankle injury that he dealt with at the end of last season. Could that just be part of the hold-in? We'll have to see how all of this develops. But at the very least, if you want to look at this optimistically, it's encouraging that the wide receiver is in the building. He is at least in front of the front office when we're talking about possibly locking him in for the foreseeable future with a new contract. So the fact that he is at the team facility, even though it's on the PUP list, even though it's probably a hold-in, at least you can look at that with a bit of encouragement, a bit of optimism.
Tyler, we've seen some huge paydays for wide receivers across the NFL these last couple of years. Does Terry deserve to be amongst those highest paid in the league, near a guy like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or CeeDee Lamb?
I think he's going to look for it. I mean, I don't really hate on any wide receiver or any player for that matter trying to get the most amount of money possible, but I don't think that he's going to be in that Jamar Chase realm. That is special air that you have to be in, because when he signed that deal, he wasn't just the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. He was the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. TJ Watt has since taken that title, but still, you're talking about north of $40 million per season. For Terry McLaurin entering his age 30 season, I don't necessarily see those heights being reached, but you have to look at his contract right now. He's making $23.2 million in average annual salary. A lot of money for me and you, but for a star #1 wide receiver, you need to be in that $30 million per year AAV to really make yourself feel comfortable. For me, I look at the contracts that were recently signed this offseason for DK Metcalf and Garrett Wilson more recently. Those are the deals that I think make a little bit more sense. It would get Terry McLaurin into that top 5 discussion in terms of highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. It's around $33 million in AAV, so almost a $10 million increase of what he was making per season. That to me feels like the sweet spot when we get this all said and done.
All right, so he's in the building, but do you see this situation continuing into the regular season, or do you think Washington and Terry get a deal done before week 1 kicks off?
I would say that this is the encouraging step, right? So I think that the fact that he is at least showing up, and as I indicated earlier, avoiding fines first and foremost, but the fact that he's there and the fact that he's in front of the front office the entire time that he's there, it just provides more windows for them to negotiate, him and his agent with the front office and Adam Peters. So I think that this gets resolved before week 1. I think that Terry McLaurin, who has been a team leader for this organization through some trying times, wants to get this done. He knows how close this team is from really taking that step forward. I mean, they were in the NFC Championship a season ago after an abysmal season, actually abysmal, decade plus over the last few years for the organization. So they're finally turning the corner. He's part of that, coming off a career year, 13 receiving touchdowns, caught 70% of his targets from Jayden Daniels. They feel it. They improved this offseason. They brought in Deebo Samuel. They improved the offensive line with Laremy Tunsil. They've added pieces on the defensive side. So the upswing is there for the Commanders. I would assume that there's an emphasis on both sides to have Terry McLaurin as in your number one wideout come week 1, because to me, it's important. You look at the start of this season, it's the kind of the soft part of their schedule. That is where I think they can build up a lot of wins to really inflate their win total. At the back end of the season, after their bye, it's kind of a gauntlet. So you really need to improve your win total for the first half of the season to really give yourself the best chance to win the NFC East, to make the playoffs for the second season in a row. So there's a lot of emphasis here to get this done with Terry McLaurin so you can start the season off right.
And staying on the football side of all that, you sort of touched on it, but getting Jayden Daniels, you always hear the sophomore slump with quarterbacks. So how important is it for Daniels to get his top wide receiver into camp at this point before we get deeper into, let's say, the preseason and approach week 1?
Yeah, it's massive. The more reps that you can have with your number one wide receiver, it's only going to help you really kind of shake the rust off before we get to the start of the season, right? I think that Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, they showed you last season that they kind of have day one built-in chemistry, 13 receiving touchdowns. Like I said, he got 70% of his targets. That was a career high for Terry McLaurin, and that's just an insane number when you really think about it. So, yes, of course, if you're Jayden Daniels, you're looking at this situation, you're saying, boy, we made so many strides this offseason, improving the offensive line, bringing in a legit number 2 in Deebo Samuel, but it doesn't really mean much if Terry McLaurin isn't there to be your crown jewel as the number 1 option in the passing game. So to have him at least make the step towards signing a contract by at least showing up to training camp today, and maybe, you know, you move forward to a deal before the start of the season, that's going to be massive for Jayden Daniels to avoid that sophomore slump that you kind of fear going into year 2.
All right, Elvis is in the building. Tyler Sullivan, thank you so much. Yes, Terry McLaurin again reporting to training camp. Of course, he wants that new deal, but let's take a look at the highest paid wide receivers by AAV in the NFL, and here's why he wants some of that money. He comes in as the 17th highest paid wideout in the league at $22.8 million a year. You see a number, you know, obviously more than a dozen guys ahead of him, with Jamar Chase setting the pace in the NFL, averaging more than $40 million a season. We'll see what happens with Terry McLaurin if that deal gets done sometime between now and week 1.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.